Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Records Managers online forum. My name is Martin Killian, and I'm speaking to you in my capacity as Director of Collections this morning. This is a takeover of the usual State Records New South Wales Records Managers Forum by Museums of History New South Wales, and it's very much designed to focus on the new legislative requirement under the State Records Act concerning transfer plans for records identified as being required as state archives. I'd like to start the meeting by acknowledging traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting today. For me, that's the Darug people at the Western Sydney Records Centre, but extend that welcome to that respect to those countries that you are coming to us from, and paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start the forum this morning. So most people's cameras and mics have been disabled, but if you could ensure that those continue to be disabled throughout the course of the morning, please. And if for any reason you do appear on our screens, please also just be aware that the forum, as per usual, is being recorded. And that recording will be available on our website fairly soon. So there'll be opportunities, of course, to ask questions throughout the forum. And we do encourage you to use the chat function of Teams to ask those questions or make any comments. And we'll have people from Museums of History New South Wales, subject matter experts, attending this morning, and those people will be able to answer those questions as we go, but there will also be a question and answer section at the end of our presentations this morning. So there's a number of both Museums of History New South Wales people and also State Records New South Wales people here this morning. So I'd like to welcome my colleagues. So Kate Musgrave, who's the Manager of Collection Services, Christy Tabiri, who's our Senior Advisor at Agency Services, and Alison Graycon, who's our Advisor of our Officer of Agency Services, and Aisling Irwin, who's one of our wonderful archivists within the Collection Services team, and in particular the Agency Services team. So our agenda this morning is for me just to spend a couple of minutes on refreshing your memories around transfer planning and the new requirement, then to hand over to Alison for a demonstration of the transfer planning tool in our online service portal. Many of you will already be familiar with that portal from the access directions work as an example that you did last year, but Alison's intending to step us through how to build a transfer plan through using that portal. We'll then have a question and answer session that Christy will be leading, and then we'll wrap up by 11 o'clock. So that's the plan for today. In terms of questions and answers, also, as I said, do use the chat function as we go throughout this morning's forum. So, transfer plans. So this is a new requirement under the State Records Act, which came into operation at the beginning of this year. So it has been a requirement that from that time, agencies or public officers covered by the State Records Act are required to submit a transfer plan to Museums of History New South Wales. Now, that transfer plan is only for those records of enduring value that have been identified as required as state archives and needing to be transferred at some point to the State Archives collection. The intent behind this change to the State Records Act was fundamentally to ensure greater visibility and greater management of those assets of enduring value that are state archives or will become state archives once they're transferred to Museums of History New South Wales. It's important for us all as record keeping professionals to be aware of those records and the conditions in which they may be stored at the moment. These are historically important documents that will be of enduring value today and into the future. So it is important that we care for them and manage them as assets. The intention also, though, was for us at Museums of History New South Wales to have a sense of what's out there in terms of those records so that we can better plan and ultimately provide you with a better service by being able to flex up and flex down when we know that public officers are likely to transfer to us and what sort of material they're likely to transfer to us. So, as I said, the requirement started on the 1st of January. We are intending that the transfer plans are submitted to us through the online tool that you'll learn more about today. I'm very pleased to say that a number of public officers have already done so, and really pleased that around 40 or so public officers have already submitted transfer plans to us. We have been communicating this requirement throughout last year and earlier this year. And that initial plan is to be submitted to us by the 31st of December. So you have the rest of this calendar year to submit your transfer plan. Once submitted, those transfer plans can be updated periodically, and a new plan won't be required until 5 years after that 31st of December 2024 deadline. So the 31st of December 2029, you'll be required to submit a new transfer plan, but during those 5 years, you're able to update that material. Now, we recognise that for a number of agencies, this could be challenging, that you may not necessarily have that visibility and control over these particular records. And as we've always maintained, we've adopted a very pragmatic approach to the transfer plan, at least in this first cycle, where we're requiring basic details of the material that you will still have. So the requirements of those transfer plans is to provide us with a high-level description of what the material is, the format of that material, whether it's in physical format or in digital format, an idea of the quantity of that material, and the intended date of the transfer. Submitting a transfer plan does not mean you have to transfer. It means you have to provide us with a transfer plan, but you don't have to transfer. I would certainly hope that by getting better awareness and management of these records through needing to do a transfer plan, you may then consider transferring records to us as part of the State Archives collection. It's not mandatory transfer, it's a mandatory transfer plan. Now, the actual requirements of a transfer plan will be articulated in the State Records Regulation, which is being finalised at the moment. However, that content that I've just outlined of a high-level description, the format and quantity and the intended date of transfer will be those requirements that are articulated in the regulation. So we have, while not having yet been able to provide the regulation, it hasn't yet been promulgated and so on, we have gone forth with those requirements as being the basic requirements of the transfer plan. So that's the overview. As I said, the requirement is intended to really provide better visibility, better management and better care of these records that will become State Archives on transfer. And I know that there are out there with you in public offices some of this material and that there are some public officers who don't regularly transfer to us. And this requirement is all intended to try and assist and foster that transfer of material. Because at the end of the day, once you've finished with those records for business needs and that they are required for State Archives, it is just merely more work for you to do to have to manage that material. On transfer, that material then becomes the responsibility of Museums of History New South Wales to manage, to arrange and describe and to provide access to through the access directions requirements of the State Records Act. So once you've identified the material, and submitted a transfer plan and then transfer, yes, there's probably work in doing that, but once the material itself is transferred, you're actually transferring obligation for the ongoing care and management of that material to Museums of History New South Wales. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alison, who is, as I said, our Officer of Agency Services, for a demonstration of the transfer planning tool. So Alison, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen and walk you through how you can get your transfer plan submitted to us through our service portal. When you log on to your service portal, this is the landing area, and you'll see we've got a number of different tiles. To navigate to the transfer plan area, you just need to click on the transfer plan tile. If you have any questions as I'm going through the transfer plan steps here, please feel free to add them to the chat, and Christy's going to be responding to questions as we go through, and we also have a question and answer session at the end as well. So you'll have plenty of time to get any answers that you need as we're moving through. So once you're in the transfer plan area, you have two tiles, a create a transfer plan and a transfer plan explorer tile. I'll show you the explorer tile in a little minute. For now, let's get started on creating a transfer plan. Once you've landed on the transfer plan creation, you have an option to create a new or add to the transfer plan. As Martin mentioned earlier, we have the facility, or you have the ability to add and edit transfer plans during the 5 years that they're active, and I'll show you that in a moment. For now, we'll get started with creating a new plan. In the portal, any field with a red asterisk, as you'll see there, is a mandatory field and will require filling in before you can move to the next step. So the first thing to do with your transfer plan is to give it a meaningful name. We suggest the name of your public office and perhaps the years that the plan is pertaining to. So this is just a free text field. And we'll go from this year, and they're 5-year plans. There's a start date. This will open up a drop down, a calendar field, and you can navigate and select the date that's applicable for your plan. And there's an end date also, which again, when you click in there, it'll drop the calendar and you can navigate through and select the date that is applicable. There's also a description field for the beginning of the plan. This isn't mandatory, but again, we'd suggest that you put some meaningful text in there that'll just help give the plan some context for yourselves and for people in the future looking at it. So this can be any kind of text that you'd like. And then we select the next button. We have an authorizing officer name. When you click in this field, it will drop down and any contacts that are linked to your profile in the portal will appear as someone to select. If the person that you'd like to select is not already there, you can click on the box here that just says, I can't see the person that I'm looking for. When you click on the box, it brings up a first, last name, phone and email field. You can complete those and click next, and that person will then be created. The person won't be automatically created in the portal or have any communication sent to them. It just adds them to that drop-down list that before. So for now, I'll just use the list. And you select next. And then we come to the guts of the transfer plan. So we've given it a name, and now we're actually going to add line items to give us more information on what we're actually putting into the plan, what we're planning to transfer. So you can see the first line item here is the type of record. So I'll click in and it gives you two options, a digital or physical record set. So for this, we'll start with physical. You then have a format. Again, we've provided some options here. There's a drop down, so you can see audio, visual, glass plate, negatives, maps and plans, etc. And you can scroll down. If the format that you're looking for isn't there, we do have an other selection, and then you could use the description field at the bottom of the line item to provide more details about that if required. So for this example, pick volumes. In terms of intention to transfer, like Martin said, popping a record set or a format into the transfer plan does not indicate an immediate or automatic transfer. And we do acknowledge that some people will have no intention to transfer, whether that's in the lifetime of the plan or potentially maybe at all with certain record sets. So you can see that that is an option as a tick box, but we've also got indicative data transfer fields. So if you have an idea about when potentially your records will be ready to transfer, you can pop them into this field here. Again, the date field works as a calendar dropdown. So for now, we'll just say that potentially we're going to transfer these. I'm just clicking through using the buttons and then selecting a day that we may be transferring these records. Then we have a current location. So we've put a few here for people to select from. The physical records could be on-site in your office. They could be with you but off-site in another location. They could potentially be with a third party where that or potentially with a regional archive centre. So a third party could be a commercial vendor, for example, who's storing your records on your behalf. For this one, we might select just on-site. It's just a drop down and select from the list. The next field we have are the condition. Again, this can be quite general. We've provided a couple for you to select from: insect or rodent damage, mold or water damage, other types of damage, whether that be loose or torn papers, etc. Overall good, or the vinegar syndrome, which again is a breakdown mostly of acetate-based format, so things like motion picture film or image negatives. So you can select what's applicable. We'll do mold for this example. And then we have a physical quantity. Now we understand if you're looking at different formats and people have things stored differently, getting an idea of physical quantity may be challenging. So what we've based this field on is the assumption that a standard shelf is about 1 metre. So if you'd like to use that in your equations, you can kind of do a quick count of how many shelves of certain records you may have and then equate that to about 1 metre. This is just a numeric field, so you can't type any text in here, but you can type your numbers and you can do partial. So let's say we have 1.5 metres of these volumes at the moment for this particular line item. And then we have a description here. The one titling of the transfer plan is that this one is mandatory. So we would like some context popped into this description field. That could be if you know the disposal class of the record set, you could start typing that in, or if you have any extra information you'd like to provide us about the records, or indeed yourself, it's your plan, so it might be handy for you to have information in your description fields for you to look upon in the future. So we'll just pop some information in here to demonstrate. Okay, 10. So it takes numbers and takes text, obviously, and it's free text. You've got quite a bit of room. Let's say, so that's the kind of information that we may want. Now you've reached the bottom of the page. If you click the submit button from here, you can see in this lovely bold writing that's there to catch our attention that will then submit the plan, which is fine. If you only have one line item, that's fine. If, however, your intention is to add multiple line items, you just need to scroll back to the top here and you'll see there's an add button. So clicking on that add button will allow you to continue to fill in the plan before submitting it. If you click that add button by mistake, there is a delete field, and I'll just hit that delete, it just takes that line item away. But for now, we'll do a second. I'll just walk through a digital so you can see the different options that you have if your transfer plan will include entry. So again, we have the type of records. So we'll go to digital. So when we talk about digital records, we're talking about digital born records, databases, records you may have in your electronic management systems, etc. And those are the formats that we have here. So you can see that now that we've selected digital, our drop downs are going to change. We have database, electronic management systems, unstructured data, or other, that lovely other. And again, you could use the description field at the bottom to give us more information on that. I'll just demonstrate if we have no intention to transfer. You'll see that the date field here will disappear. So I'm just going to click that for now so you can use that button. The current location, so locations of digital, we have hardware. So if you know you've got things on hard drives or floppy disks, perhaps, things like that. Your local network, perhaps with New South Wales Gov DC, or it might be that data that's stored offsite or in cloud storage. The condition of digital records, we just have two. It's pretty easy. It's currently in use or potentially in a legacy system. We have a digital quantity. Again, we've got it in gigabytes. So if it is larger, you might have to do some conversion to get it to the gigabytes. Or again, you could put a number in and then provide us further information in the description field. So I'll put 50 for now. And then we have the description field. So as I've mentioned before, you can put some context in here. Data, selection, and in. There we go. So this one, we're just for the purposes of this demonstration, we're not intending to transfer because the records are in ongoing business use currently. So that's an example. As I said, I'll just scroll up for the physical, just for a relook. And we have the digital there. Now let's say that we've finished and we're ready. We're actually going to click submit. And you'll get a successful thank you, your plan has been saved. You'll also note that when you've saved a transfer plan, you'll actually get a prefix added with a plan number. So you can search for your plans in the Plan Explorer through the number or the title, and I'll show you how to do that now. So if we want to go and view a plan, I'm just going to jump back to our transfer plan area of the portal by clicking transfer plan here. And we can look at our Explorer. So the new one that you'll be creating this year will appear like so. You'll have your transfer plan number, your name, the status of it, which will be active for everybody, and then some other information is populated on that front screen. To access the plan and look at it in more detail, you can click the number. And that will open up the plan. So the front page of the plan view is kind of high level. You can see here we have the transfer plan information, the name, the controlling agency, and some of the other information. You'll see it's got your quantities. We have digital quantities displaying as 0 because we actually clicked the not intended to transfer button. So that's why that's saying 0, even though we put that information in there. So if you do click that you have no intentions to transfer, you'll notice that those totals might not display. And then we can look at the individual line items down the bottom. And so we can go into them in more detail if we'd like. We can open those up. And I'll show you in just 1 minute how you can do that through this hyperlink. While I'm at the front, I'd just also like to show you that you can print your plans. So if you're needing to share them through your business or keep them as records somewhere or at hand, you can print them. So from the top level, again, it just prints off that information, the higher level information, the number, the name, the totals, etc., and that there are 2 line items. But you can also get a more detailed printable view of those line items, and I'll show you how to do that now. So we're going to scroll down. We're back at the transfer plan view. Just going to scroll down the bottom, and I'll just open this top line item here. And you'll see it has that full information that we inputted into the transfer line item earlier. So the quantity, indicative date of transfer, description, etc. And at the top of this view, you've also got that printable view again. So you can click on that and then you can print this view as well. Okay. Now from here, to get back to the transfer plan view, you can there's a hyperlink here under transfer plan, that number. You can click on that and it takes you back to the plan. One more feature of the transfer plan view is that there is a file upload functionality here. So if you have any files you'd like to upload onto your plan, again, to add any context or information for yourselves in the future or for us, please feel free to use that. You just click that upload button file and it links to your file explorer and you can attach things as required. Okay. Just going to go back to transfer plan. So we've mentioned a few times that these plans are dynamic and can be added to or edited over time. We understand that's not going to be a function that everyone's going to want to use, but I'd just like to demonstrate at the moment, if you do, say, for example, your quantities change or you find a new format a year into the plan, how you can make those edits to your transfer plan. So for the first example, I'm going to go back to create transfer plan. So let's say, for example, we've submitted our transfer plan and a little while later you find a room or a desk or a shelf and there's some extra formats or an extra record set that you'd like to add to your plan. To do that, you can go to create new plan like we just did, and then this button here, add to transfer plan. You can click on that, click into the transfer plan field there, and either by starting to type your transfer plan number, so you can see there that came up, or alternatively, if you don't remember the number, but you remember your title, the name that you gave it, you can start searching through your plans that way. This is the plan we'd like to add to, and click on next. And what it does, it opens a new transfer line item, which you can then add the information to. So for this example, we'll go another physical. Just going to add paper on this example. And we'll say that we have there we go, an indicative date, current location, we'll say it's offsite just for something different, and overall good. We're going to say we've got 3 meters. And for this one, we'll say that we found some media releases that need to come in. And we've got a disposal that we know, so we'll add that into our description as well. Okay, and then submit. So it works exactly like when you're creating a new transfer plan. And if we go to our Plan Explorer, there's our plan. We'll open it up. I'm just going to scroll through and you can see that our total physical plan meterage has increased. And I'll just scroll down the bottom and you can see we have a new line there. And there's our paper, our new line item 1079. So that's how over time, if you have records that you can add line items, let's say, for example, however, we have changed our quantity of records or something in an existing line item has already changed. If you'd like to make that amendment, you can come into your transfer plan like we are currently, scroll down to the applicable line item. You can click on that. And then you can see something I didn't mention before, but you may have noticed, we have the little pencils. So if you'd like to edit a field here, what you can do, let's say, for example, we found some more of our volumes. You can just click on that pencil and then increase that number. Let's say we found 5 meters and then save. That's all you need to do. And then you can use the hyperlink to go back to the transfer plan. And you can see that again, our quantity has changed. So these are functions that you can use. Some people may have a set and forget approach, and that's fine. Others may sort of want to use the plans a bit more dynamically. And so that's what I've shown you today. Okay. I'm just going to take you back to the transfer plan because that's really the demo done. Thanks, Martin. I'll hand back to you.
Thanks very much, Alison, for that comprehensive look at the portal. While you've been speaking, the chat function has been fairly active, I think is the word. So what I might do while we've been answering some of the inquiries and questions while we've been going, I might now hand over to Christy, who many of you will already know, who's our Senior Advisor of Agency Services. Christy can lead us through some of the questions. So Christy, there've been quite a few, as you know, some of which you've answered. So I would encourage people to also have a look at the chat function while we go through some of the questions. Just to answer one of the questions before we start, there was some suggestion about whether the chat function of today could be circulated as information, sort of as an FAQs for people. We will certainly do that. So we've already got a bit of an FAQs section for the transfer plans on the website, and we'll add to that as a result of this discussion, and certainly happy to provide that information and information more broadly, other than just to the people who've been able to attend this morning. So Christy, over to you to lead us through the questions and answers.
My little fingers are sore after typing all the responses. So I've gotten through some of them. Before we start, we did invite people to email through some questions for answering in the forum, and we did get a few of them. So I will go through them first, just to answer those questions that we were asked in advance. And then what I'll do is I'll hand over to my colleague Ashlyn to start calling out some of the questions that I probably missed answering in the chat. So the first question we received via email was, can you please explain if I need to create a line item for each separate file or record in the transfer plan for our paper records? And can we bundle records in the same series and upload as one line item? So yes, you can group records together. We're not expecting an individual item list. We're expecting for one entry for one series or group of similar records. So the example I provided back to this inquirer was, for example, research papers from 2010 to 2020. You can do that, and just an estimate of the quantity that there are. The next, so I have been asked that question a few times. Do I need to list every single record? No, you don't. You can group them together. Another question. In regard to the transfer plan of State Archives records, is there a form that can be reviewed or filled out in regards to the possible transfer? So as Alison's demonstrated to you, the form is the online form. We don't have a backup spreadsheet that you could submit to us, but there is nothing to stop you from actually having a look at the fields that we require in the portal, going away, developing your own spreadsheet, and then coming in and adding that information to the plan. As you've also seen, it is something that you can sort of go into and then add to later. So you can start your plan, but then you might find another set of records, or you might find that you've got more shelves of minute books than what you expected tucked away in the corner. So you can go in and update that information as well. So you can add to your transfer plan throughout this year if that makes it easier for you. The other question we got, so this is the last one we got via email, was how detailed should we be in adding each record series to our transfer plan? This was a local council who asked this. There's almost 150 State Archives classes in GA39, and our council would have records for a lot, if not most of those classes. Do we need to add the records for each reference class to the transfer plan separately? For a lot of them, we might have some in digital and some in physical, so they might be a hybrid set. So do we need to add all of our physical for this class and then all of our digital for this class? That would make quite a lot of details in our transfer plan. Or should we add at a higher level? such as making an entry per function or activity and per format. That is perfectly fine. We're not expecting you to actually have to, some people, so the transfer plan has been designed for a very wide level of maturity. We know some people who actually have these details to hand and could provide us with very detailed information about the state archives that they hold. We have some people who I've spoken to who don't even know where to start and don't know what state archives they hold. So this has been designed for a very wide level of maturity. As such, if you want to go on a deep dive, you're more than welcome to, but we're not expecting you to do that. So if you've got, for example, something like your rate books. So the answer to that question is a bit of it depends. So if you're a council and you've got the rate books as council, that would be one entry that you'd put in your transfer plan. You know, rate books for Kingswood City Council from 1901 to 2005, for example. And you might have 20 shelves of those records, so 20 metres. But then you might have more nebulous stuff like correspondence files. We're not expecting you to break things up into separate classes, so you could just have a set of correspondence files required as state archives. We don't expect you to complete an entry for every single disposal class that you have, but we appreciate any information you can provide to us for that future planning that Martin indicated earlier. It'll help us to plan for the future and to better support you, and it will also give us a bit of an overview of what's out there across New South Wales as well. That individual also asked if we could provide a sample transfer plan dedicated to local council. So we've taken that on board and we will be doing that, and we'll publish that to our website once we've done so. So that was it for the pre-asked questions, Ashlyn. Do you want to call out some of the questions that I haven't gotten a chance to? Oh, okay, Alison's doing it. Apparently Ashlyn can't unmute. So sorry, Alison. Sorry, Ashlyn.
No problem. So we did have some questions popped in the chat that we haven't gotten to yet. One of the questions was, does the plan include records that are closed access or records not available to public?
So yes, it does. Irrespective of the access conditions of those records, they are still required as state archives, and you can still transfer them into the state archives collection. And if you are no longer using them, it is recommended that you would consider doing so. The access directions for a record that's transferred into the state archives, we follow the guidance provided by the Public Office, so you can transfer closed records into the collection and they would remain closed until the period has elapsed by which the public can access it. So yes, even if they're closed records, still provide the information to us.
Great. Just representing, there was a question about what do we do with hybrid record sets if they are both hard copy and paper, and representing that in the line items, or how can you do it in the plan?
Yeah, we're not expecting you to put it in twice. I'd recommend that you put in that description field when you're sort of telling us what the records are. You could indicate in that you know, these records were, you know, physical until 2021, but when we move to a digital system after that. So we're not expecting you to put them in twice. Just something in the description would be great. So.
Sorry, just scrolling through now. Give me one moment.
I'll just have a look at some of them that have come in more recently. I'll let Alison look at the older ones. Some requests for some more examples, some different examples of transfer plans, not just local government. Yes, we can look at doing that. Christopher has asked, what exactly will Museums of History, New South Wales and State Records be using the transfer plans for? So,
Christy, do you mind if I take that question?
Take that one. Yeah, I was going to say, you've already mentioned that. So
yeah, so Christopher, just to be clear, this is Museums of History New South Wales, not a state records matter. So it's what Museums of History New South Wales will be using the transfer plans for. Effectively, we will be using them to be able to plan our resourcing much better than we've been able to in the past. So up until now, we have not been able to in any way, shape or form predict, forecast or plan for transfer from public offices. What that has meant is that we can receive, you know, a large transfer of material and not have the resourcing to be able to respond to that or to provide the service to you all as public officers to assist and support that transfer. Knowing what is coming over the period of time of the transfer plans will allow us to plan our resourcing much better. So in a very practical sense, we'll be analysing all the transfer plans and then slicing those in ways of around, well, what formats are we expecting? When are we expecting certain materials? Is there going to be a bump in transfers in 2027 and then it falls off in 2028? What's the pattern of transfer? So that's what we'll be using the transfer plans for. Thanks, Christy.
No worries. So we've just been having a chat internally here. Just if we don't get to answer all of the questions because there are many, we will be following up with responses and we will also be adding to our FAQs on the website. So don't worry if we don't get to your question, it will be answered. One of the questions we've had, can we link access directions to the transfer plan? No, you cannot. The access direction is required for state records that are in your control or when transferring into the State Archives collection as a transfer. They're not required for the transfer plan. Where should we note the access controls that are required on the records? That's a similar question. That would be at the point of transfer. It's not required for the transfer plan. Do you have priorities or targets for groups of records that you wish to catch up or acquiring? So, for example, our examples are about local government. No. We don't have priorities. We're interested in all information. The reason we're focused on local government is because most of the queries we got in advance were from that particular jurisdiction. So we are interested in all records and we're not going to target particular groups. So, Alison.
Great. I've just found one.
Yep.
We haven't gotten to yet. The question is, if a public office doesn't have any records classed as a state archive, is a transfer plan submission still mandatory?
Okay, so it is very unlikely that there is any public office out there with no records required as a state archive. For example, the annual reports of a public office are required as a state archive, and pretty much every public office does have to submit an annual report. So there will always potentially be something that is required. We would still like you to submit a transfer plan, even if you are a recent office that hasn't got a backlog of legacy records, or if you've still got records in current use that are required as state archives. But yeah, if in doubt, contact us and we can provide some support for your particular public office. But yeah, it's unlikely that there would be no state archives required from your organisation because you are working on behalf of the citizens of New South Wales. And some of what you do is obviously important because the government has created your agency. So.
Christy, can I just pick up on another one?
Yep.
So Kevin's asked if there's a succinct memo that we can leverage to escalate the transfer plan requirement to executive leadership. So Kevin, I'm not sure whether you're aware, but our Chief Executive, Mary Darwell, wrote to all Chief Executives a couple of weeks ago, and that was followed up by communication from me to senior responsible officers a few days later. So I'm hoping that that message has been heard at various levels within public offices. By all means, as the following weeks and months unfold, if there's more communication support that we can provide to individual agencies or the sector as a whole, please let us know.
Okay. Yana has asked, we have a number of physical paper records currently in storage at state archives. I'm assuming that means potentially with the government records repository. If they're already with state archives and they've been transferred in the past, you don't need to provide us with information. They've already been transferred. This is just for material that has not been transferred. You can contact the government records repository's customer service team for information about your holdings if it is records that are in the government records repository. Just be aware that the government records repository is the commercial wing of Museums of History New South Wales. Records held in the GRR that you're paying storage for are not part of the State Archives collection yet, so a formal transfer process is required and they can be included in your transfer plan. How do we send files and physical items to museums of history? That's not really part of the transfer plan discussion. That's more of the actual process for transfer, and we have got advice on our website about transfer. So by all means, reach out to us separately from this and we can talk you through the process. Alison will drop in the links to the website for you. Can we have an explanation of the creation of and reference to a series on the Q&A fact sheet, please? I'm not sure about that one. I'll have to check up on that because I'm not really sure what that is referring to. How large can the file is the file that can be uploaded? Good question, actually. I assume you mean uploaded to the transfer plan. No, usually we'll find out, but I haven't seen that there's a restriction. It's designed for things like, you know, if you had a conservation report done on some records because you're worried that they're archives, but they look ratty, but you've actually already paid for a conservation work on it. It's not there for you to provide an entire list of your holdings. It's just more there if you want to provide us with some additional information, but I haven't got information on that to hand, but we will find out. What else? Where are the physical items stored? Will the records be kept across multiple physical sites? So the State Archives collection in the main is held on site at the Western Sydney Record Centre at Kingswood. We do have regional archive centres in various locations across the state that do house some of the State Archives collection on our behalf and which are available to members of the public. So Charles Sturt at Wagga Wagga is one of them. University of New England at Armidale is another. There are several, but in the main, the records are held at the Western Sydney Record Centre at 161 O'Connell Street, Kingswood. All over the place because the questions keep coming in. I had a clarification on the series question. So yes, you can put the series details in if you already have a series registered for them. So if you've got board minutes in your transfer plan, yes, you can sort of say board minutes series NRS 12345. You can do that. So the description is there for you to provide whatever information you'd like to. A question I've been asked separately is there a character limit for that field? 255 characters is the limit for that description field. So you can put in there what you would like. Just scrolling up. Bear with me. If you transfer items for the transfer plan, should you then delete that series off the plan, or is there a section to place the transfer date? You don't need to do anything. So you've provided the information to us. You don't need to go back in and update it if you don't want to. If you do want to, there is the ability, I believe, and Alison will confirm this for me, to actually go in and edit the status to transferred. But I'll get Alison to check that while we're chatting here. Is there a field to identify security classifications for highly sensitive records? No, but you could put it in the description, Brian. Should the indicative date be the date you expect to finish all the transfers for that item or the date you will be doing the first consignment? Listen, we're not going to be that prescriptive about it, Penny. Any information you give us is great. You could start transferring at that date. You could aim to have it all done by that date. We just appreciate the information being provided to us. So, sorry, Alison has just confirmed that for me.
Does look at the transfer plan and how you can change that if you've transferred. If people would like me just to jump on and share my screen again, and I can just walk everyone through that.
Yep, thanks, Al.
Okay. So in terms of editing line items, so if you've finished a transfer, or again, you've an indicative date, but you'd like to sort of firm that up. So I've jumped straight back. I'll just go a bit slowly again because everyone's learning here. We'll go to Transfer Plan Explorer. So this is you've submitted a plan already, and then you've actually potentially finished a transfer. Go into the transfer, and you can scroll down to the line items. So let's say, for example, our physical records that we put in our first example, we've actually completed a transfer and we want to update that. You can see at the plan here, we have a status and they're planned. So when you add a line, that's kind of a default status. You haven't set that in any way. It's just there as part of the system applies that. But what you are able to do is edit that. So you could, for example, use the pencil and it opens up all the fields. You can click on planned and you can see here that we've actually got a transfer completed selection. So you're able to do that. Also, you could add anything in the description if you'd like, if you wanted to sort of update that description and say this was transferred and then leave a specific date in that description field, you could. Or as well, you could actually change that date to the date that you finished a transfer if that's how you would like to use your plan. So I'll just save that so you can see that that status changes. We'll go back to the transfer plan. Scroll down to the line items for you. So you can see it doesn't remove the line item from your plan. So it doesn't delete it or remove it. It just changes the status there. And again, if you change that if you had changed that indicative date to an actual date, the column is still called indicative date, but you would have that information there. So you can see now we have 3 different statuses. We have the transfer completed because we've just edited it, our no intention to transfer, which was our digital ongoing use line item. And then we had our new one that we found when we opened a room. So that's gone to status planned by default of the system. So I hope that helps everybody. Thanks, Christy.
Okay, I took that opportunity to answer some more questions. Who updates the status, the agency or NSW? Listen, you can update the status if you want to. We won't update it. Basically, what will happen is the plan will ensure for the next 5 years. In 2029, we'll do this again. And what we will do is basically close the transfer plans that were previously submitted as the new ones are received. When a plan is edited, does it have to be authorised each time or only in the initial submission? No, we don't mandate that. We don't monitor that. That's up to your own internal processes. So no, we don't require an authorisation each time. Is there anything else? We've still got a few minutes. So Jana's asked, our court recorders are listed as retained for 10 years and then dispose of them. So after 10 years, they'll be deleted. So do we need this as a line item? No, we're only interested in records required as state archives. We don't need anything that's not going to eventually come into the collection. So I would be focusing on that. We don't need to know anything about records that you might be holding on to in-house. It's only for stuff that's required as state archives that you need to put in your plan. Deb Naray has asked, to save on time, can we look to move entries across in 2029 rather than re-entering everything again from scratch? At the moment, no, we don't have that. I have already been asked that, so I've put it on a list of a wish list of future enhancements, depending on funding and budget and everything. At the moment, no, you would have to start your plan again from scratch, but hopefully it would be lesser because you might have transferred some of the material you identified previously. What else have we got? If there are large groups of records yet to be assessed, should we prioritise that work or can we note in the transfer plan for now? Listen, this is all designed to help public officers focus on gaining some control over those important assets, as Martin referred to them, for the state and the citizens of New South Wales. We don't mandate how you do that. Encourage you to start focusing on identifying those records and providing that information to us. I know that's possibly a bit of a wishy-washy answer for you. We have had some people submit a transfer plan to say, here's my plan, I'm going to start planning. That's not really what we need. We actually need some detail about the records you hold. So we probably would prefer for that assessment to be done and that information provided. Martin, have you got something you want to add to that?
No, I was going to move on to another question, actually. So
Go ahead.
I just wanted to pick up on Sharon's question about the RMAT question 18 regarding transfers. Sharon, I'll take that on notice and convey that to the State Records New South Wales team. I think that is a good point to raise. I would, for those of you, and it's only been a small number of you, who are saying, yes, but we have no intention to transfer. I fully appreciate that there are often good reasons that you wouldn't transfer, but I would also encourage you to hear the words I said earlier, that once that material is transferred, management of that material also becomes the responsibility of Museums of History New South Wales. So, as I said, fully appreciate there can be very good reasons why people would want to hold on to material that is required to be state archives, but I would also encourage you to really interrogate the reasons as to why your agency is holding on to that material, and to talk to us about those reasons and have a discussion with us about that.
Yeah.
Christy, I think we probably need to call a halt there. I mean, we have so many questions.
We knew that we would. We did know that we would. We were prepared.
So, yes. So thank you for fielding as many as we could get to. We will extract the chat from this and circulate information about an FAQ document that will be made available to you. So thank you all very much for the really active engagement throughout the session this morning. You can see on your screens, the final slide is some information about access and transfers that you should contact Museums of History New South Wales about that material, and that email address is transfer@mhnsw.au. However, for information about record keeping obligations under Part 2 of the State Records Act, then the email address to State Records is govrec@staterecords.nsw.gov.au. Thank you all for your attendance this morning. We knew that this would be a popular topic. We've had around 200 people join us online this morning, so I knew that it was bound to generate conversation as well. I think it's fair to say that you've asked a lot of questions that we have already thought of, and that we will communicate those answers to you in a broad way so that everyone has that information. There's a couple there that we will certainly take on notice and come back to you about. For now, I'll close the session. Again, thank you all for your attendance. Have a good rest of your Friday, and we look forward to continuing this discussion and communication about transfer plans with you throughout the year. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.